What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're going to be talking about the DLC in Esports Boxing Club. Now, in the new gameplay from February 17th that we got to see, which was absolutely incredible, at the end of the video Raxzilla, one of the developers, answered a series of questions, being, how does the judging system work? Can we change controller scheme? And the biggest one that everyone wants to know is, how will the DLC work? And he said this.
Agalos P has a question about DLC. Well, Agalos, it's not time yet to talk about DLC plans. However, we do want to touch on the roster and some of the speculation we've seen. We've signed a lot of fighters and have made several roster announcements over the last year, and have even signed fighters we've yet to reveal. Some of you have been following our announcements and have said things like, there's no way all of these fighters will be in ESBC when it drops. And if you've shared a comment like that, you're correct. There will be boxers who are included in the game at launch, and some who will be a part of our DLC rollout over time. Most boxers who aren't in at launch will be paid DLC, but there will also be some free DLC to look forward to. So, what can we tell you right now about the ESBC release roster? As we've said, we're working toward the largest roster of licensed fighters ever in a boxing game. In order to totally lock down our roster, we have to get fighter scans into our development pipeline and approved, working around boxers' busy schedules to do so. All of this, of course, has been challenging during the ever-changing COVID landscape. That means today, we don't have a finalized list of boxers who will make the released roster. Now, we know a top priority for many of you is making sure some of the best fighters in the sport are in ESBC on day one when you purchase the game. So you'll see Canelo, Ali, Fury, Wilder, Terrence Crawford, Joe Frazier, Roy Jones, Lomachenko, Claressa Shields, Katie Taylor, and more the very first time you play. And we'll continue to share more of our finalized roster as we get closer and lock in those names. But we want to make sure you understand our philosophy around the roster and where we're at right now.
So as you heard, guys, he says not the time, however, he said not the time, however, and then went on to give us, in my opinion, quite a good amount of information. I mean, right off the bounce, there's already over 200 fighters in the game, some that we know, or most of them we know, some that we don't, so we could get even bigger names in the future that we don't know of right now. Then he mentioned launch fighters, that we'll get a series of launch fighters, and then DLC over time. Because they clearly plan on running this game for a long time, maybe, even longer than Rainbow Six Siege, which is now in its 7th year and is hugely active, which obviously is probably part of their plan. They probably want a game they can constantly update over and over and over and over again, and always add to both gameplay-wise and fighter roster-wise. As well as he mentioned free DLC in the future, which in my opinion would be the likes of prospects, some new signed fighters to the pro ranks, as well as new signed to ESBC. Now, he mentioned free on launch. He mentioned Canelo, Ali, Fury, Wilder, Crawford, Frazier, Roy Jones Jr., Vasily Lomachenko, Claressa Shields, Katie Taylor, and so many more. Now, in my opinion, I believe right now for being free right off the bounce, as well as those names, we're likely to see Conor Benn, Ricky Hatton, Joe Joyce, Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward, Rocky Marciano, Joe Lewis, Johnny Nelson, David Adelaide, Eddie Hall, Lyndon Arthur, Lawrence Akali, Josh Warrington, Kid Galahad, and I'm sure so many more, because we've all seen their player models in-game already. The Ricky Hatton one admittedly was old, that not many of you guys would have seen. That's from like 2019. That's not even on their YouTube channel. So that shit is old school. But a lot of the names that I've just mentioned, we've already seen, as well as we've seen Dimitri Bivol recently scanned in. Quite a while ago, we saw Jamel Herring scanned in. And clearly, we never know what's going on, because we saw Fury and Wilder's in-game models at the same time they were announced. So clearly, there is stuff that's always going on that we just don't know about. As well as, I suppose, one more fighter would be Josh Taylor, because we've seen a screenshot of his in-game model. So, quite a few fighters that we've seen there, their in-game models. So right off the bounce, even that, as just a small roster, if you just got a taster of that and they were like, listen, this is the roster for the first month, I'd be like, all right, it's game time, baby, let's play. Like, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, all right, I'm all right with that, Then, of course, we have talks of DLC. Now, obviously, it makes sense. Over 200 fighters, and I'm sure they want to add more. I'm sure their game plans to have, 500-odd fighters, prospects, world champions, legends, retired champions, gatekeepers, contenders, everyone from A to Z. I'm sure that's what they want. I'm sure that's their game plan, to build this game up, to have it just huge within its first 4 or 5 odd years. Now, for DLC, I could most likely seeing it be, like I said, free prospects. As well as I could see DLC being like, you know, some huge names that are like, you know, just announced, introducing Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, Marvin Hagler, Lennox Lewis, things like that. For example, you know, individual fighters for DLC, or perhaps maybe we could see like the Four Kings DLC. Like, for example, as although we already have Sugar Ray Leonard in the game, we haven't seen his in-game model. We don't know if he's been scanned yet. But let's say it takes a while to scan him, they could charge for Sugar Ray Leonard, but then they could add the other three with Duran, Hearns, and Hagler, and have the Four Kings DLC pack for, you know, I don't know, $12.99, $15.99, $19.99, whatever it may cost in the future. As well as another idea, you know, being for example, a UK pack, Lennox Lewis, if he is signed, David Hay, we're pretty sure he's signed, but right now we aren't 100% sure. Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn, Eubank Sr., if signed. That's just an example, but just, you know, so it wouldn't have to be, you wouldn't like say open store and it's just 100 individual fighters for $6.99 a piece, because there's not many people that are going to be able to afford to pay for every single fighter. And of course, I'm going to want every single fighter. So I think things like packs definitely make sense, but that's just, you know, that's just me bouncing something off. I don't have a say in it whatsoever. I just think that would make sense. I think people would quite enjoy that as well, to see like, you know, introduced in Legends Pack 3, and then we get, you know, Mike Tyson, Holyfield, etc, etc, etc. Or, you know, we get rivalry packs, so then you get like two fighters that were rivals with each other, for example. You don't know, just something like that would just make sense. I think also it would, you know, they'd still get their money making DLC. We'd save maybe what feels like a little bit of money because we're not paying for them individually. But you guys have to what you think. But all in all honesty, you know, like they said we're not going to talk about it, but they actually gave us quite a lot of information. You know, we're going to get some top fighters in. Arguably, Muhammad Ali, the greatest, as it were. And right now, the current pound-for-pound kings with Canelo, Terence Crawford, Lomachenko, you know, Kate Taylor and Carissa Shields, all on the bounce from day one. That's pretty awesome. And then, of course, DLC, which we know that now. We know for sure that there's going to be a DLC plan, a big DLC plan inbound, as well as free DLC, paid DLC. I think it just makes sense, you know. I think one thing they'll probably try and do is, like, say, like, you know, I don't know, Triple G, for example, Naira Nui, a couple of my favourite fighters. Let's say they've got a big fight card coming up. They'll wait until that point, and then they'll go introduce him just before his fight night. Boom, Naira Nui. He is, you know, in 2 days' time, he's fighting to unify the division. You can now play as him in ESBC kind of thing. Like, I think that would be something that would make sense. It would be pretty cool, and it would attract the fans that are going to watch it over to the game, and the fans of the game are going to be attracted to the fighter and over to his fight that will be happening. So, kind of go hand in hand. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you as always for watching. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and yeah, I think it's pretty cool so far. I'm not upset with the DLC thing. DLC's a part of gaming these days. It really is. You know, some games love to just rip you and just tear your arsehole wide open and just take you for everything. Some games like this, they make sense. They've got a reason to have the DLC, and I'm on board for it. I really am. But yeah, thank you as always for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.